G'day and welcome back to the Breathless blog. My name is Brody Grogan. I'm a photographer here in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, and this is my crazy idea of a blog in that I basically have a chat, download my week, discuss anything that's been capturing my mind and my thoughts throughout the week, throughout my life or my photography, and I do that straight after I go for a run. I found that the most creative and inspiring parts of my workflow or ideas for my business and my creativity come ultimately when I'm out there slogging away on a run. So that will explain why I look like this, a little bit of a mess and trying to catch my breath. Today's probably a little bit different. This week I want to have a chat about a little bit my story actually. So, for those of you who have watched a few of my blogs and have known me for a little while now, you know that I'm constantly banging on about the importance of story and how passionate I am about capturing and photographing that. So today I just want to open up and share a little bit about mine, and certainly not on a big red couch with Dr. Phil or rabbiting on, although I have been known to waffle on a little bit. I've been reliably informed from time to time, so I'll try and keep it relatively brief. But I guess the story that I want to chat about today relates to my experience in learning how to deal with approval, number one, and expectation. And how a few things in my life have actually impacted the way I view my photography as a passion, as a hobby, but now also as a business and the way that I want to give to the people that I'm interacting with. So I grew up in a small little country town called Tenterfield. Now that's in northern New South Wales, just about 10 minutes south of the border actually. Both my parents' family come from in and around that area. Beautiful region of New South Wales and Australia. For those of you who've driven through there, know the region really well, you will attest to what I'm vouching for there. When I was about 4 years old, my parents separated, right? So again, I'm certainly not an outlier or one to be isolated for that to happen in their life. The good news for me is that I actually was really well loved and supported with the family I had around me. So my mum remarried quite early on in that piece when I was about, I think it must have been about 6 or 7 when she met my stepdad then at the time. And I still remained in contact with my dad. Now, to keep it pretty short, as time evolved and went on, the relationship with my dad hasn't been that great, in that I actually haven't spoken to him for quite some time. Again, short, I accept some of the responsibility for that, and I know that there's obviously some things that we both could have done a lot better to make this little story a lot brighter and a lot cheerier for everyone. But so that was sort of one aspect that shaped the idea of seeking approval from people, from I guess both camps really early on, and then the expectation and how to deal with that, right, and how that sort of molds you as a young person. I know that there will be people listening to this already are like, yeah, I kind of understand a bit of that. I relate to that. I get that. But as I grew up, one of the great things and gifts in my life was that my first love actually wasn't photography. It was cricket. So on my mum's side in particular, cricket was just a passion for the family, and it was something that was passed on to me. So I love cricket, and without tooting my own horn, as a little fella, I was pretty good at it, especially in a small country town where the population's about 3,000. In a small fish tank, I went okay. My performance was pretty good. I got selected in a few rep teams. Got to a point where I actually moved away from Tenterfield and went to school in Toowoomba. Had a couple of years at Toowoomba Grammar School. Loved every minute of that. And ultimately, I made that move and the jump from my comfort zone as a 14, 15-year-old boy to go and pursue my dreams at that time in cricket, to play for Australia and do all those types of things. Now, when I reflect back on that period of my life and why I unofficially retired when I was about 21, the big thing was that while I love cricket for the sport and the meticulous strive for perfection and the camaraderie and lots of different things that went with it, ultimately I was also in love with the idea that if I could perform and produce performances on a cricket field that were really, really good and really strong, then I would actually then get the cravings met of approval, or I suppose you want to call it love or whatever, but that was kind of how I compartmentalised it as a young fella. So what that ended up doing for me was that when I was playing cricket, the pressure at a superficial level was there to, perform for the team and, don't let your coaches down and, make sure that you're winning games of cricket for your school and, for like the wider ranging people that influence my cricket at the time. But the major hamstringing fundamental feature that I think probably held me back, and not that it's an excuse, but I understand that it's probably a significant factor now, is that I was constantly so afraid of failure and not getting the approval and, pats on the back from, say, my dad and that side of the family, that ultimately when I walked out to either train or play, I wasn't thinking about, as a batter, the bowler bowling the ball to me and hitting and perfecting the skills that I need to actually go well at the game. I'm just thinking about, I don't want to let down that person and have them be ashamed of me or, not recognise me as being successful, if that kind of isn't, I don't know if that makes sense or isn't too morbid for a photography podcast. So, at the end of the day, my last interaction verbally with my dad was when I was about 21, and that conversation did not go well. I to be honest, regret how that conversation went, but it was pretty nasty on both fronts, right? And you know what? The irony, the coincidental part of that whole thing is that at that time, I just drifted from cricket. The one solid thing, the love, the passion of that, I just moved away from it because for 21, for over 10 years, I was playing for a reason other than self-gratification. I was, playing for emotional response. Dangerous territory to get into, right? So time moves on. Around that same time, I found photography. I went and bought a camera by accident before a cricket tour to Sri Lanka. Went there, photographed it, fantastic. Fell in love with people's stories and using photography as an art form to try and tell their story. Similar sorts of things here. I loved it for the art form, loved it for the feelings that it gave me when I took a good photograph, from my perspective, but also, that external gratification that we get, the seeking of approval when people say, oh, it's a really great photo, or, you're really talented, you've got a great eye, all of those things. I loved it. Of course, anyone loves when you receive a compliment. But then as time goes on and you realise that you want to do more of it and get better at it, and you realise more mistakes that you make, there's a couple of things I found that happen. In that seeking of approval and trying to meet expectations of people for you to produce good work, was that my creativity was being hamstrung, and my enjoyment of my photography started to suffer because of that. I wasn't even a professional photographer. I was doing things for free or, not on the books, or even very early days of my business as a part-time business operator at a very low level of income. So, but that pressure and meeting a client's demands or seeking that, feedback just started to get to me. And it's only quite recently that I think that I've actually been able to just piece of the two major loves, of course, apart from my wife and family, but those things that I've loved in my life, piece them together and start to identify that, hey, there's actually some pretty confronting similarities here that I need to address. Now, what's changed should probably lead me to seeing the similarities and make some adjustments in my life. To be honest, probably the big one in the last 12 to 18 months is just becoming a father myself. I think anyone that has, experienced that leap from just being you into having someone else in your life that really does take precedence evokes some pretty strong reflection and just the way that you view yourself, but also how you want to be for that person or how you want to be for your partner or the people that you love in your life. So that's been definitely one thing. I've also started to, my love for sorry, need a drink, right? My love for photography has sort of been refined to that central concept of a love for storytelling and people. So I've said it before, I'm not going to bang on about it again, but people are fascinating, they captivate me, I want to engage and I want to be part of their story, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. I want to be the one with the camera to help them document and tell that story. The other thing is that when you're afraid to be creative, invariably you're afraid to make mistakes. So with my cricket, it's such a cutthroat sport, especially as a batter. For those who understand the sport, it's not like you can make one mistake most times and you can have a reprieve on that day. You make a mistake, you're going to sit down, you can't participate, you can't go and score runs, right? So fear of failure becomes a big part of that. And you know what, with my photography, especially when we would travel, I get really frustrated and look for excuses where, if I didn't have the right conditions or the right light, or there was too many people, not enough people, then I'd be looking for this excuse to go, well, I couldn't take a good photograph today because of whatever it was. And then, I'd miss out on really amazing things. I wouldn't be able to appreciate a destination for what it was. So I can see the sun's popping in behind me there. So I'm just going to try and play a bit of chicken to save your eyes. But I could go to the fjords in Norway and it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, but I'd be too busy worried about, there's clouds or there's, the composition's not right, rather than just stopping and going, hey, get out of your own way. Don't worry about failure. All right, or the expectations of others. Just enjoy what it is in front of you, emotionally connect with what you're looking at, and the rest will take care of itself. And with that, I think, it's not like the notion of failure or fear of not meeting expectation or approval. It's not something that, for me anyway, it's not something I just got over overnight. But it was step by step, just allowing myself to be brave and show a little bit of courage for myself. And sometimes that's just, off the top of my head, like I think about the first time I was asked to photograph a wedding. Now, I was terrified of doing that. I always said, no, I'll never do that. I know there's photographers listening who will attest to that feeling as well. But what I think I pushed myself to say, look, thank you, I'm really flattered that you've asked me to. I know a photographer who's actually a really good mate of mine, and there's a funny story which I'll tell you one day too about that photographer photographing my wedding as a stand-in best man. Anyway, I digress. Why doesn't he photograph the wedding and I'll be his second shooter? So it's like a soft entry. But at the time, 7 years ago, that was a really big step to actually put myself out there and accept that invitation to photograph a wedding. So I don't know, there's a saying, you can't be courageous or brave if you're not a bit scared. Okay, and that's totally fine. It's just trying to, for me, and the way I try and look at it is just trying to be comfortable in being uncomfortable is probably the best way I can break it down. And fear or self-doubt's not a bad thing. It doesn't have to hamstring us from what we're doing. Or if we've got people saying that we can't do something, or that maybe they don't believe in us, or that we're not good enough, or playing some little emotional games around the way I view us or our photography, you know what? At the end of the day, if you believe in what you're doing, then that's the most important thing, and I think the most valuable thing for you as a creative person, just to back yourself. Back yourself to go and photograph things and make mistakes. Gee whiz, that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, I did an online diploma in photography, which is not an official diploma, it was an online course, about 10 years ago now. That's probably the only formal training I've had. The rest is through talking with people, speaking with other photographers, but more than else, it's just about going and stuffing up, going and making mistakes. So I implore you, please free yourself and just, I think I might have even said in the very first blog, but allow yourself just to go and photograph something without any fear that, people are going to come back and question or tell you're not good enough, or all those little internal monologues that you have that put yourself down. But I think just to finish off and try and link everything together, I'd say the most integral thing about the way you photograph is just photographing the world the way that you see it. We often compare ourselves to others in all facets of our life, but the most valuable thing that you can offer is just the value and experience that you have as an individual person, but also how that then reflects onto your life. Okay? Unfortunately, you might see some grey hairs here. My days as a cricketer are well and truly past. to be honest, I'm not that sad about that. I still love the sport. I actually worked in cricket for 10 years as a coach and administrator. So I still, I'll never not love the sport, right? But my days as a player are well and truly dusted. But I know that the learnings that I've taken from that part of my life and how I go about seeking satisfaction and, actually, let's shift that. Can't do it anymore. Sorry, folks. How I go about, job and creative satisfaction have impacted the way I now go about my photography. And for that learning, I am so much more fulfilled and just confident and calm in what I can do. And you know what? If I make mistakes, it's not the end of the world, because I trust myself and my skills that I've grown over time through perseverance that, you know, if I'm at a wedding or on a shoot and I do stuff up, that I've got the technical knowledge to actually fix that. But I also know that, as I've said before, if I'm just concentrating on what I can give to people, then I know that they'll be satisfied with what I can produce, and so will I. That's where the satisfaction, lies for me. So, hopefully it's not too much red couch for you, and Dr. Phil, and obviously I'm a former cricketer / now full-time photographer. I don't have a degree in psychology or anything like that. But what I would like to think is that I have a good emotional intelligence for understanding that just the way, or just because I feel one way, doesn't mean that no one else has ever felt that way. So hopefully by you stopping by today and just having a little listen to what's been playing on my mind this week, that it might, reach out and just, at least let you know that you're not alone with maybe some of the things that you're dealing with in your life, but more than that, that you can grow from that. You can put yourself out there and actually chase and be the person or the photographer that you want to be. So thanks so much for stopping by. I'd love you to subscribe. Please, if you've got any comments on today's blog or anything in the past, or you'd like me to have a chat about something, then please get in touch. Comments, send us a DM, email. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, that's me. Over and out.